Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, SAP. Hope you're all doing good. So today's topic will be on the floats, or also called as the schedule margin key. So in this video, we'll discuss on what are the parameters that we have in the schedule margin key. So there are various aspects of the schedule margin key, such as the float before production, float after production, release period, right? So where do we actually use these floats during the planning of a particular uh, operation, or maybe scheduling a particular production order? So now let's get into the schedule margin key and see how to configure this, and what field basically signifies what. So for today's example, I'm going to use this particular material, the left bearing assembly, for the test case. So the first thing we'll have to do is we have to we have to first configure the schedule margin key and then assign it into the material master. So before we go into the configuration, so here is where in the MRP2 view, we have a field for the schedule margin key. So that will be under the section of the scheduling. So here we'll have to assign the schedule margin key that has been configured at the plant level. So if I show you the options that we have here, so here we have the schedule margin key, and now I'm going to use the schedule margin key 002. So here we do have a few parameters for the schedule margin key 002. One is the opening period, and then we have float after production, and then you have the float before production, and also the release period. So now let's go into the configuration and see what is the significance of these four elements in the schedule margin key. So to go into the configuration, I'm going into the SPRO and then the IMG path. So you'll have to go to the production node, and under that you have materials requirement planning, and then the planning, and then you have the scheduling and capacity parameters. So open that. So there you will see a node for the schedule margin key. So we'll see this as a defined floats. So the schedule margin key can be configured per each plant. So the margin key that we create here, something like 001, it could be used by several plants. But whereas the parameters that we have under this schedule margin key will be in the combination of the plant and the schedule margin key. So the schedule margin key 001 can have one set of parameters for plant 001, and the same schedule margin key in plant 002 can have a different set of parameters. Okay, why? Because this is basically a plant dependent configuration setup. So let's go to the the schedule margin key for our plant. So in 1000, so here we have the schedule margin key 002. So the same parameters that we have discussed earlier, we see the same fields over here: the opening period, float before production, float after production, and then the release period. So now let's discuss what significance do we have for each of these four fields. So the first one, on the opening period, this is basically the work days. So if we maintain it as 10, it means that the opening period is for 10 working days. And when we talk about the work days, that would be based on the factory calendar assigned to the particular plant. So if I have a factory calendar, let's say that operates 5 days a week, and that factory calendar has been assigned to the plant 1000, so then the 10 working days will be calculated based on the factory calendar that has been assigned to this plant 1000. So the opening period is nothing but the number of days uh, that will be subtracted from the order start date in order to determine the order creation date. Okay, and then we have the float before production. So it means that, let's take an example. Before you start producing, or maybe you start running an operation. So you will have to wait for 2 or 3 days in the shop floor in order to uh, process that particular component, right? So for that reason, you can assign this float before production in the work days. So it means that, let's say the operation start date is on the 1st of June, but still system will ask you to release this particular to start the operation, I mean to say the first operation, uh, only once the float before production has been calculated, right? It means that your order start date could be 10 days before the actual operation time. The same way you have float after production, which means that once the production is completed in the shop floor, you'll have to wait for 10 working days in order to say that the order has been completed. And then you have the release period. So this release period is again maintained in the work days according to the factory calendar. And this release period is nothing but the duration or the number of days that the planner has got before he actually releases the production order. Okay, so that is about the description of these four fields. And now let's see in a real-time scenario how this actually works and how does the calculation takes place when we start creating a planned order or a production order. So let's go back to MDO4, to our material. Okay, so now looking at the MDO4, we could see that the stock available is of 10 pieces in the plant. So let's start creating a demand for this. So for that, I'm going to use the creation of a PIR. So, okay, I'm going to use this till the end of this year, and then LSF, which is make to stock. Oh, so let me go to the material master and make sure that I have the planning strategy assigned to it. So you have no planning strategy, right? Or the strategy group. So that's the reason it is asking us to create a planning strategy. So now this is a make to stock production. So I've assigned the strategy group as 10 and then save it. Now let's go back to MDO4. So I'm always coming back to MDO4. Why? Because I've created the shortcuts to run the MRP or the conversion of planned order to production order, and also to create the planned independent requirement. So if you are interested to know about this creation process, I've already uploaded a video and you can find it from the playlist or the other content we have in the channel. So now I'm going to use this create PIR. So as you can see that since we have a consistent master data, system has actually taken me to the initial screen, the second screen of the PIR or the MD61. So let me start creating this demand from the month of June. So I'll create it for 100 pieces for June, and July 150, and August it's 160. And I'm going to save it. Do a refresh and we should see that the PIRs appear here. So there you go. So now based on the net requirement calculation, we have the available of 10 pieces, and based on the PIR, the leftover quantity is 90 pieces. And then the next PIR in the month of July, we have it 150. That makes us total together 240. And then with the PIR for the month of August 160, we have it a total of 400 requirements. So the 400 is the cumulative of all the PIRs that we just created for this material. So the next thing is to run MRP. So while running MRP, we should make sure that we are using the scheduling type as 2 to determine the lead time scheduling. Okay, this is where the lead times will be calculated from the routing or the master recipe, depending on what scenario you are into, the production orders or the process orders. And then, okay, that's it. So I'm choosing the scheduling type as lead time scheduling. Okay, now we could see that the plant orders got created. Going back to MDF4, refresh. So we have the plant orders created. So now let's see how these plant orders are being calculated by the system and how these dates appear. So if I go into the details of this plant order, you can see that the order start date is 1605, so which is the current date, and the order finish is 31/5/2023, and the planned opening period is the 6th of May, which is already into the past. That's the reason we see an exception message 05 saying that the opening date is into the past when compared with the current date. Okay, so let's go to the second period. This could be a proper example in order to find the dates. Yeah, so if I go into the display of this planned order, so here we could see the basic dates and also the scheduling dates or the production dates. So the opening date, it shows as 25 May 2023, and whereas the production date, it shows as 14/6/2023. And the start date is basically the June 4th, 2023. And the end date is showing as the end of June, 30th of June. And the production end is basically the 19th of June, 2023. So now let's try to understand how this is calculated. So if I go into the tab of the detailed scheduling, so this tab only appears when we use the MRP type, the scheduling parameter during the MRP run as the lead time scheduling. So this tab only appears if we are calculating the dates or the operation lead times that is coming from the routing, the lead times that we have assigned to the operations. So only then we will see this particular tab or the view as detailed scheduling. So now if we look at the dates, let's try to understand or see how system basically calculated. So yeah, let me go back one step. So this plan order has been created for the independent requirement in the month of July, right? So which means that by July 1st, we will need to execute or complete the production process and the stock should be available. So the requirement date or the end date of this particular planned order is showing as the 1st of July. So please bear that in mind. So going to the detailed scheduling. So the scheduling type, if you take a look here, it shows as the backward scheduling, right? Which means that the dates of this planned order or the production order or maybe the scheduling of the order, it basically starts from the end date and then it comes to the forward. So here we will apply the concept of subtraction. So the end date minus the lead times, that gives you the start date of the production. Okay, so here since we are using the schedule margin key 002, which basically says that you have the opening period of 10 days and float after is 10 again and float before is 10 and the release period is 5 days. So now if I go to the header, so here we have the opening period as 25/5. Okay, enough to calculate the days. Since we are in the backward scheduling, like you have seen here in the scheduling type in the detailed scheduling tab, so we should always start with the end date. So the end date here, it shows as 36/2023, whereas our requirement is on the 1st of July 2023. So the reason for this one day is basically with the goods receipt processing time. So if we see here, so in the month of June, we have only 30 days, so which is the last working day of this particular month. And then the next availability is on the 1st of July. So this particular one day is basically calculated based on the goods receipt processing time. So please do bear in mind that the GR processing time is always maintained in the work days according to the factory calendar. Okay, so based on our requirement of the 1st of July, so 1st of July minus one day which is our GR processing time. That gives us the end date of the production should be as 30th of June. Okay, got it? And now with the end date, we will have to calculate the end date of the production days. So the difference between the 30th and the end of the production should be around 10 days. Why? Because we have a float defined in the schedule margin key, right? So if we look at here in the schedule margin key, the float after production, sorry, this one, the float after production is 10 working days. So we'll have to calculate this. So if we go into this calendar again, so minus 10, right? So it should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So 19 should be the end of this particular production. And you also could see that we have the time available here. So the time in the production dates is only possible again with the detailed scheduling or the lead time scheduling during the MRP run. And this time will be calculated based on the availability of the work center or the capacities in the work center. So that will go into the detail going forward. So now we know that the production should be ended by the 19th of June. And now the production start is showing as 14/6/2023. So we have around 5 days for the production, right? So now let's see how this has been calculated. So if we look at this here, so we have two operations, operation 10 and operation 20, which basically has two different work centers. So work center, let me just expand this field. Yeah, so here we have this work center R-A20 in operation 10 and 1119 in the operation 20. So in the operation 10, we only have one capacity, that is labor. And in operation 20, we have two capacities for the same work center, machine and labor. So now if we do the backward calculation again with the end, so it says that the end of this particular operation will be on the 19th of June at 11 p.m. And whereas the start is basically the 16th of June at 12 p.m. Okay, so it needs around 3 days to complete this particular operation. And if we look at the total capacity requirements, that is around 25 hours for each of these capacities. Okay, so according to the availability or the capacity utilization per day, the capacity requirements are also calculated by the system only if we use the detailed scheduling again. Okay, and whereas the lead time or the capacity availability or the required capacity is basically 22.5 hours. That again brings us back to yeah, so this basically should start by 16th, which means that the end of the first operation should be on 16/6 2023 at 12:20 p.m. And again going back of for 22.5 hours, that gives us the start of this operation 14.6 sorry June 14th at 8:20 p.m. So this should be the start of the first operation. Okay, so now we understood that the production dates or the scheduled dates for this particular planned order is coming based on the capacity requirements across these work centers for every operation. So now we arrived at the start or the scheduled start date of the production, which is 14th of June. And then the basic dates is showing as 4th of June 2023. So why is that? Why? Because in the schedule margin key, we have this parameter as, if you look at this, the float before production, we have it as 10 days. So before you actually start the production, you should wait for 10 days, which is the 4th of June 2023. That is our basic dates. Okay, so the basic dates are basically calculated or maybe determined including your schedule margin keys and also the floats that we have maintained in the schedule margin key. But whereas if you want to see the actual production dates, that should be part of your scheduled dates. So once you convert this planned order into a production order, then we will see the difference between the basic dates and the scheduled dates or the production dates. So these are the actual production times or durations. And whereas this is the overall date of the production start and the production finish. That includes your schedule margin key as well. Okay, so that is how the calculation on the schedule margin key basically works. So now we understood about the end date and also the start date of this order. But what about the opening period? See, so the opening days, it is basically showing with a difference of 10 days. Why? Because in the schedule margin key, we also have the opening period. So the opening period is 10 days, 10 working days. So that is basically the start date of the order minus 10 days, which gives us the opening date of this particular order or the planned order. And then the available for MRP, it means that the day on which or the date where the order should be completed and the stock should be available for MRP. So the requirement is on July 1st. So that's the reason the available for MRP is also showing as the requirement date itself. So now let me convert this planned order into a production order. Okay, so here you could see the similar data that we have discussed so far. So here we have two things again, the basic dates and also the schedule dates. So the schedule dates, like I said, it is always based on your lead time scheduling and also your interoperation timings. And whereas the basic dates are calculated based on the order finish and the order start date. That so this includes your schedule margin key, but whereas your schedule dates will only include your operation lead times. Okay, so now let me go into the work center and show you where these capacities that we discussed so far of the 22.5 hours, let me show you that. Okay, let me go into the detail of it. Okay, so here we can see that this is operation 10 with the work center R-A20, where we have a setup time of 3 hours, and whereas the processing time is 19.5 hours. And the dates are actually calculated based on your durations or the available capacities in this particular work center on that particular day. So now if I go into the details of this work center, you go into the capacities. So here I just have one capacity category, which is my labor. So just go into the details of this capacity category where you can define the factory calendar ID. Okay, and also you can define the start date and the finish date of the start time and the finish time of this particular work center. So there could be few work centers that could be operating 24 hours a day, but if you are following a particular shift or maybe a particular time in a day where the work center is only operated by the operator or maybe in a particular duration, so then we are going to define the start and the end times of this particular machine. And then if you are going to use any kind of a breaks during the execution of the operation, or maybe there could be some kind of a maintenance or a downtime on every work center or a machine, right? So that those breaks can also be determined over here. So all these three fields are in the time format. And the utilization of this work center, is it like 100% during the entire day, or you just utilize it around 70 or 80% in a particular day? So based on that, the capacities will be calculated. And now based on the start time and the end time and along with the length of break, the total operating time for this particular machine is around 15 hours in a particular day. And how many machines or how many capacities do we have under this particular work center? So I mentioned it as two capacities in this particular work center. So where the total available capacity is for 30 hours. So this is calculated nothing but the operating time multiplied by the number of individual capacities. So that gives us the total available capacity in this work center. So now going back to the second work center in the second operation, dates and times. So here we have the setup time as 10 hours, processing time as 15 hours again. So which is giving us 25 hours of total execution time. And now if I go into the details of this work center, go into the capacities. So here I have two capacity categories. One is the machine and the second one is the labor. So this capacity category or this machine, it basically operates with two capacity categories, a machine and a labor. So it means that always a person should be available along with the machine in order to carry out its function. So if I go into the details of this capacity category machine, it says that it starts operating at 7 a.m. and it finishes by 11 p.m. and the length of break is again for 1 hour. So this is similar to what we have seen earlier. And the same way, if I go into the details of the capacity, so here I have defined my available times for this capacity category. Okay, so based on these values and also the operating lead times that we assign in the operation or the routing, as you can see here, we define the setup time, the processing time, right? So these are coming again from the work center. Let me show you that. Go to the work center and you see the standard value keys, right? So these are the activities. We have setup time, machine time, labor time, right? So based on these standard values, we are going to assign the duration in the routing. So let me take you to that. Go to the master data, go to the routing, and for this operation 10, yeah, which is the first operation. So to manufacture 100 pieces, we need a setup time of 3 hours, a machine time of 10 hours, and the labor time of 13 hours. In the same way, for the second operation, for the base quantity of 100 pieces, we need a setup time of 10 hours, machine 10 hours, and then labor 10 hours. So these are basically the lead times where we assign it in the routing. And whereas the activities or the standard values are basically coming from the work center. Okay, the setup, machine and labor, they come from the work center, and whereas the values for these activities will be assigned in the routing. So once we start scheduling the order, so the data will be derived from the corresponding routing or the master recipe, and the scheduling of the order will take place. Okay, so that is basically the concept of this schedule margin key.